Jordan heads north, in search of the sandstone rock formations the beach is famous for.
That was part of my mission. I was going to go take some pictures of the sandstone.
After exhausting all the ground-level angles, he starts looking for a high vantage point.
The cliff wall is continuous all the way around, and I spotted a ledge about halfway up that looked like it would be quite a nice perch to get some good shots of Vancouver Island on the horizon. I decided to leave my camera up and see if I could make my way up it, and then if it looked like it was a decent spot, then I'd lug my bag up. It was quite a big camera bag. I had all my gear in it. I was wondering how I was going to get up there. There was no obvious route. I've always been one to sort of enjoy climbing trees and scrambling over boulders and that sort of thing. So it was pretty easy climbing. You know, I didn't have to find any handholds or footholds or anything like that.
But the higher Jordan climbs, the steeper the cliff becomes.
I made my way up quite a treacherous little section. The cliff right there, it's pretty much vertical.
He then hits another problem. To get to the ledge, Jordan has to clamber around a bulge in the rock face. Jordan thinks about giving up the climb. He knows a slip from this height could prove fatal. But he really wants that shot.
I just reached around to sort of shift my way around it. Virtually as soon as I got my fingers into this crack, this rock came off. I had my footing on the ledge, but not my balance for what seemed like an eternity. I watched this rock go down. There was a good 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi before it hit. I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's me next. I knew I couldn't keep my balance and instantly got the feeling you get in your stomach when you're going over the top of a roller coaster. The adrenaline kicked in right away. I knew that this wasn't going to be a little twist your ankle sort of fall. Below was just a bunch of jagged rocks. I knew that I was going to be quite a mess at the bottom. I was thinking I was going to have to be sponged off the cliffs pretty much. When I first started falling, time seemed to slow about as close to stopping as it could. That was sort of the most surreal part of the fall, but it didn't take long for gravity to speed it back up again. And then suddenly I was on the bottom. There I was at the bottom, staring up at the blue sky and where I had just been, up on the ledge there. And I could feel that there'd been a big impact. My head was definitely swimming. It just hurt. But I was surprised I wasn't dead. That was my first thought. I was more happy than scared at that point, just because I realized the fall was over and I still had my brains in my head.
It's a miracle he's alive. But Jordan can't believe he's escaped serious injury.
I knew I couldn't have gotten away from a fall of that height scot-free. The first thing I did was check my head. I figured I must have given it a pretty good whack. Nothing felt broken, and everything else was looking pretty good. So I was sort of enjoying these small victories.
He remains cautious.
My next fear was that I'd broken my back somewhere and wouldn't be able to move my legs.
Paralysis is his worst nightmare.
It took me about 5 minutes of laying there to get the courage up to try and wiggle my toes. When I did finally get the courage and they moved, I was ecstatic. Felt that if I was still alive, if I wasn't paralyzed, then anything else would be inconsequential. My next mission, I suppose, was to see sort of what shape I was in beyond those two basics of still being alive and still being able to move my legs. As soon as I tried to roll over, I could sort of feel the bone, them grating against each other. I immediately knew that something was, very, very broken. I I don't know if heard is the right word, you sort of feel it more, a crunch. I was sweating from the pain and from the shock, and I reached behind and just gently sort of was touching my hip. I was very aware that it wasn't just a little crack. Where once there was smooth bone, there was now a couple jagged pieces sort of grinding into each other and was pushing against the skin.
The fall has completely shattered Jordan's pelvis. It's a horrific injury that effectively separates his right leg from the rest of his body. Standing is out of the question. He tries to turn onto his stomach so he can at least crawl. Now Jordan realizes the terrible situation he's in. He's left his mobile phone in his van. He lives on his own, so no one will be looking for him. And Mushroom Beach gets almost no visitors this late in the season. Jordan is completely on his own.
I remember watching old movies where people would be in some sort of discomfort and either biting on a bullet or biting on a strap, So I thought I'd try it.
Biting on the belt takes his mind off the pain, tearing at his torso.
I put a lot of pretty deep indentations into the strap with my teeth.
But the terrain constantly throws up obstacles that block his path.
There's boulders the size of cars, there's boulders the size of lazy boy recliners, there's boulders the size of one-bedroom apartments all around this area. And as I was only about 1.5 feet off the ground, I couldn't really see sort of what was beyond the next boulder.
Give me a break.
It was very, very frustrating because every inch was being bought with a lot of pain. It just became a landscape conspiring to keep me from possibly living. Sort of a prison that I had to get out of.
Although Jordan makes steady, if painful, progress, the terrain just gets tougher.
There's sort of a slot between two boulders that I couldn't get through just pulling myself sideways. I sort of had to prop myself up on my arms and swing my legs underneath.
In his bid to clear this latest obstacle, Jordan gets hopelessly stuck.
I couldn't move. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. I was sort of stuck because I couldn't get my right leg to follow the rest of it. It was just sort of being dragged behind.
Help me!
Although I knew that, you know, with the wind and everything like that no one was going to hear me, I just started yelling for help.
Somebody help me, please!
I probably was there 15 minutes or so, and, you know, my arm strength started to give from holding myself up for that long.
He has to act, even if it means risking further damage to his shattered pelvis.
In the end, the only thing I could really do was just pitch forward onto my shoulder. And try and shelter my right side as much as possible with my left, but the leg bone's connected to the hip bone. So when I did that, that was excruciating.
It's taken 2 hours of agonizing progress to travel 40 meters. And Jordan's not even halfway to his bag. But he's totally exhausted. As he braces himself for his next effort, he makes a horrifying discovery. He didn't notice the tide coming in. Now it's just a few meters away.
I knew I was below the high tide mark, and if I couldn't make it above the high tide mark, I wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. The sound of the waves against the rocks only about 2.5 feet, you know, below from where you are, and there's a long way to go. You have a lot of time to think about you might not get out.
Unable to escape the mid-afternoon sun, Jordan is becoming severely dehydrated. The dregs of tea in his thermos are long gone. Tormented by thirst, he's surrounded by water he can't drink.
These shallow pools had formed in the sandstone. I knew most of it was salt water, but I was so thirsty. I was hoping that the salt content would be low enough that it wouldn't hurt me.
Dragging himself through the salty rock pools is torture to his open wounds, but it's the quickest route.
Throughout the day, I could feel bone sort of grinding against other bone. I knew I was getting weak in a hurry, that my situation was definitely on the downward spiral.
Jordan's worsening internal injuries are taking their toll. His head throbs and his vision blurs. But then, among the waves, he spots something.
I could see in the distance a kayaker.
26 hours after his horrific fall, rescue is at hand.
I yelled as loud as I could, you know, tried to wave my arm.
Help me! Help me, please!
I kept watching it, and it didn't seem to be getting closer, further away.
Help me, please!
After a little while, I realized that what it was just a rock that was just kind of jutting out of the water.
Jordan is losing the battle between his body and his mind.
No, no!
And there's worse to come. He's only halfway back to the beach when the weather suddenly turns.
I was very cold, soaked right through, and I realized that the wood on the beach would be pretty soaked as well.
Desperate to reach shelter, Jordan presses on.
With every raindrop, my chances of lighting a big signal fire on the beach shrunk.
Hour by hour, fingertip by fingertip. Finally, an incredible 30 hours after he started his grueling marathon, he reaches his destination. It's too wet to start a fire, but at least the wooden shelter he photographed yesterday offers some protection from the elements.
Thank you. Thank you.
The shelter wasn't waterproof or windproof by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the outside, it was definitely the Ritz to me. There was no way for me to get dry. I just kept on my wet clothes and tried to keep to as small a ball as I could to sort of try and conserve my body heat. I knew that the possibility of meeting my end from exposure was becoming very real. Now I'd sort of stopped hoping that someone was going to come down and find me and realized I would have to find people as opposed to them finding me. If I was going to make it, I had to get up the cliff.
The sheer cliff he climbed down 2 days ago to reach the beach is the only way out. It was a struggle on the way down, even when he was fully fit. Climbing up the cliff without the use of his legs is surely an impossible task.
I either had to get to help or I was going to die. There was really no two ways about it, and when your choices are put that simply, it's you don't need a lot of motivation to carry on.
You can do it.
I was at the bottom looking up from 1.5 feet off the ground. It was very daunting to look up and see the size of it.
I can't believe I'm doing this.
I wasn't sure that I was going to make it.
Jordan faces a vertical climb of some 10 meters. He'll have to rely on the strength in his arms to haul his entire body weight up the rope.
Here we go.
But there is no alternative. If he doesn't attempt the climb, he will die on the beach.
1, 2, 3.
My hands were more hamburger than hands, and just with my strength, my injuries, the odds were definitely stacked. Using my hands as much as possible to brace myself, I was being so painstaking in choosing which rocks I would use for a handhold, knowing that if I made the wrong choice, that would be the end of me.
Jordan knows he can't survive another fall. His crushed pelvis means his legs are useless. All he can do is trust the strength in his arms and pray that the rope holds. He's nearly at the top when the unthinkable happens.
The rope came undone from the tree that it was attached to, and I was very lucky not to tumble back down when that gave way. Luckily, it gave me half a second to reach over and grab the nearest rock and somehow keep from falling.
Jordan realizes with horror that his arm muscles are about to give out.
My arms were just dead logs, and my grip was becoming weaker and weaker, and it was becoming apparent that something, one way or another, was going to happen pretty soon. It was the scariest point of the whole thing.
Jordan calls on the last drop of strength in his failing muscles.
I was very aware that it was do or die. I was just completely out of strength. In my arms, I couldn't feel my hands, I couldn't get my fingers to flex, and they just weren't able to keep a solid grip on any rocks.
There are now just centimeters standing between him and safety.
If I didn't get above it, I would die. There was no question. And if I fell from this wall as well, I would die, and there's no question in that. With the slickness of the rocks and the lack of feeling in my hands, it was a pretty perilous way to sort of maneuver, but that was all I could do.
If he slips now, then his grueling two-day ordeal will all have been in vain.
If I made a wrong move here, I was either going to die or be paralyzed.
He's made it.
When I found myself down top after I'd flopped myself over the top of the vertical bit, I really felt that I'd gotten past the worst of it.
But it's come at a terrible price.
I had cuts everywhere, as broken up as I was, so near complete exhaustion that I couldn't move a muscle for probably 10 minutes. But I'd felt like I'd just climbed Everest.
Jordan's achievement is superhuman, but it's only one small step towards survival. It's taken him 2 days to cover just 500 meters. The main road is almost 3 times as far again, and he's chronically dehydrated.
1, 2, 3.
I was still in the same predicament I was in when I was at the bottom of the cliff. Very badly injured, and although physically closer to getting help, there's no sign of it anywhere.
Help!
You know, I'd call for help.
Help!
There was no sign of anyone.
Help me!
Jordan is hoping that if he can reach one of the forest trails, he might encounter a hiker.
The weather was still not exactly what you'd call ideal hiking weather, so I didn't really expect anyone to be out tramping around at that time. I was so thirsty, every cell in my body was, you know, just dying for water. You can go without food for, a week or two, but 4 days without any substantial amount of water, and you're not going to be around much longer.
The rain-soaked ground chills Jordan to the core. But after nearly 100 hours without fluid, he grabs the chance to ease his parched thirst.
I was just so thirsty. I'd see a particularly tasty-looking droplet on the edge of a blade of the grass. So I was basically just crawling around, licking the grass for the water. And, if you found a cobweb that would have 20 or 30 good-looking drops on it, I would pretty much just eat the cobweb. The toll from the climb up was pretty apparent, but I knew I had to keep going. So instead of looking at it as one big, long pull that I had to do, I would break it down into sections of about 10 pulls, and then I'd rest and give myself 5 or 6 seconds of rest and then go as hard as I could.
Close to collapse, Jordan drags his broken body across the forest floor for 6 punishing hours. As the light starts to fade once again, Jordan claws his way to a picnic table. In spite of his agonizing injuries, Jordan has somehow dragged his shattered body on an epic journey of nearly 2 kilometers and up a sheer cliff. But now he's exhausted all his physical and mental reserves.
I could feel that my health was getting worse. I couldn't go any further forward. Pretty much figured that I wasn't going to be making it out, no matter what I did.
Despite all his heroic efforts, Jordan Nikerti is convinced that at the age of 26, his life is ending.
There was nothing to do but lay there, wait for death, and think of all the people that I wasn't going to see again.
By some miracle, Jordan survives the night. As dawn breaks, he draws on his final ounce of strength and determination. Severely dehydrated and slowly dying of his injuries, he forces himself to go on in a last desperate bid for life.
My plan on the 4th day was to get as close as I could to where people might chance upon me. I was that close to death. All I could think was just keep pulling.
The temptation to curl up and let go is overwhelming, but Jordan refuses to go quietly.
It probably took me around 2 hours to get about 20 yards. So I was only maybe going 5-6 feet at a time and then passing out for 10 or 15 minutes. The physical reality had set in, and there was really no more mind over matter to be had. There was no way I was going to get to the trailhead, or very much further for that matter, because the distance I was able to go before passing out was just getting shorter and shorter. I was actually going to die very soon.
Then he hears voices. He thinks the sound is hikers on a nearby trail.
Help me, please.
It was my first real chance of rescue.
Please help me.
I yelled as loud as I could to attract their attention.
Help. Help.
But Jordan's yells emerge as barely a whisper.
Help me, please.
The voices melt away into the trees.
It just seemed like it was just the cruelest joke. I was thinking that was my chance. That was it. The despair I felt at getting so close to being rescued, I've never felt that much bleakness in my life.
He starts to slip in and out of consciousness, dreams and reality blurring into one another. The sounds of voices return, just meters away.
I started yelling again, and just yelled and yelled at them.
This time, Jordan can actually see hikers through the trees. But they're getting further away.
Every step they were taking my survival with them.
Please help me!
The last two people in the group were probably about 2 steps away from being out of sight behind these trees. And there was a lady in an orange rain jacket, and I could see her stop and sort of cock her head, and she obviously had heard something. She started looking around and took a few steps back in my direction and finally saw me. As soon as she saw me, I can't even describe how relieved I was. I just watched them run towards me and just thought to myself, well, I've done my part, I'm your problem now. It was beyond joy, it was beyond anything. This was a chance at life again here.
You hear me? You hear me?
Jordan's 4-day ordeal would have finished most people, but his stubborn refusal to give up saved his life.
I came as close as you can get, I think, to dying, and it looked like I was gonna make it.
Jordan was treated for a ruptured pancreas and internal hemorrhaging, injuries that could have killed him within hours. In a series of operations, surgeons fixed Jordan's shattered pelvis using 12-centimeter long titanium screws. He also needed major skin grafts to his legs and hands. Jordan recovered fully and enjoys life at home with his family. He lives every day as though it's his last.
The only guarantee that we're given is that we will die. We can't pick when or how. The only thing we can affect is what we do with the time that we're given. I see my life now as something that is not to be squandered, even in the smallest amount.
Journeying into the heart of the Transylvanian Alps, a remote region of central Romania, is Ken Jones, a former British paratrooper in search of a holiday with a difference.
I think I'm quite a nomadic person. I tend to spend quite a lot of time on my own.
In the summer, this wild landscape would be teeming with hikers. But in mid-January, the snow and sub-freezing temperatures mean few people are brave enough to venture alone into these unforgiving mountains.
I became aware of just more or less having the whole mountain range to myself. It was a nice feeling, but it was kind of scary as well. You become aware of your own smallness.
Normally, it's a 2-day climb to the top of the mountain. But super fit ex-army man Ken has challenged himself to conquer it in a single day.
Me and my brothers were always really competitive. We'd always race each other to the bus stop each morning. On the way to school, everything was a race. I do like the feeling of my body working and functioning well, and I soon found a good rhythm. I'm a fanatical lover of freedom. And sometimes you just got to put yourself out on your own, just enjoy a different kind of peace.
Ken's made light work of the lower slopes. But hazardous terrain ahead threatens his ambitious bid for the summit.
there was a ramp. It was a really steep wall, so I needed to rely heavily on my crampons and my ice axe. And that was pretty tricky. At one point, I got halfway up, and I just slipped.
The fall serves as a warning. The mountain is treacherous, but Ken is determined to keep going. Ken retraces his steps and soon passes the point of his slip. With effort comes reward. His choice of extreme location is starting to pay off.
All of a sudden, there was just a noise from the top of a mountain. At first, I thought it was something like an animal. It was so strange and unearthly. I'd never heard anything like it before. And then I realized that this is an avalanche. I was transfixed. I'd never seen an avalanche before. In a way, it was perverse. I just wanted to look at it. I should have turned and run, but it's just something so big and magnificent.
But Ken has no time to lose. Each passing second brings him closer to death.
I turned my back on it and run as fast into the forest as I could possibly make it. And all the time I could feel like it was chasing me. My heart was beating, it was just going crazy. It was going to hit me, bury me. I thought I was going to die.
Ken dives to safety in the nick of time, and the avalanche is funneled down the firebreak.
It would have definitely killed me without a doubt. I was pretty shaken for a while. And then when I realized I was safe and I calmed down, then I just started to laugh.
He's had a narrow escape, but he's still in danger. The snow on these upper slopes is unstable.
After the avalanche, I began to feel really vulnerable on the slope. I need to find somewhere safe to sleep. So I wanted to drop down, get deeper into the forest, sleep for the night, and still possibly be able to make an ascent the next day.
It's now a race to descend to safer ground before nightfall. But through the trees, the going quickly gets tough.
But the terrain became more treacherous. Branches were poking in my eye. It was becoming a bit of a nightmare.
The rough terrain and the slope of the mountain forces him back onto open ground. The mountain is about to show him how lethal it can be. This time it's on him in an instant. It's run or die.
I ran as fast and as frantically as I could. I was running for my life. And then the next thing I knew, it pulled me off my feet. I was utterly terrified. It swallows you and engulfs you. You can feel all your bones and organs inside, everything's rattling. All of a sudden, I was falling. And then I was thinking, this is really bad. I landed on my ass, and I heard a massive crack. And that was my pelvis shattering and the head of my femur snapping off. I must have lost consciousness. I lay there not knowing what was happening or where I was. I couldn't really feel anything. It was dark.
The fall has inflicted a bloody gash to his head. But Ken is about to discover that his body has suffered a far more deadly blow.
The pain finally hit me. It was absolute agony. It was like a red-hot poke was just being pushed into the side of my leg.
The impact has broken his femur and smashed his hip joint through his pelvis, shattering it to pieces. Bone fragments have severed blood vessels around the pelvis, causing internal bleeding and making his core body temperature plummet. In this extreme environment, his injuries could prove fatal. Ken knows it's bad, but is unaware of the full extent of the damage.
I sat up and started assessing my situation. As I put my hand to the side of my leg, my left hand felt wet and sticky, and I got a big open wound on a couple of inches on the side of my left hip. It was bleeding quite heavily.
He needs to act quickly to prevent further loss of blood, which could harm his chances of survival.
I managed to force myself to roll on my side. Pulled a first field dressing from my pocket. And that seemed to stem a flow of blood. And after I dressed it, I pulled my trousers back up and I decided not to look at it again. My natural instinct was to get up and walk. My leg was in pain, but I wasn't sure if it was broken. I felt a jolt of agonizing pain shoot up my leg, and it became apparent that there was no way in hell I could walk. My leg was gone. It was a pretty desperate situation.
He's in urgent need of medical attention, but he's 8 miles from the nearest village and has no mobile or satellite phone. With military discipline, he's packed for the harsh conditions, but the avalanche has torn off his backpack and buried it further up the mountain.
I was deprived of all my provisions, my sleeping bag, my stove, my meals, everything I needed to survive.
Nobody knows where Ken is or the danger he's in. If he's to cheat death, the stamina and self-reliance that brought him here must now get him out. But he faces a tough dilemma. Go up in the vain hope of finding his life-saving kit, or conserve precious time and energy and descend in search of help.
It was a real tough decision to know what to do. The implications of making the wrong decision were deadly.
He then spots his torch, which has fallen from his backpack and miraculously turned itself on.
This torch was now my best means of survival. If I could get the torch, then I'd possibly have a chance, even if it's a small one, of finding my other items of kit. I'd have a bit more food. I'd have a sleeping bag. It was small distance, but it was so painful and so difficult to cover the ground.
Ken finds his hat and a waterproof sack before eventually salvaging his torch. But hopes of recovering his backpack and sleeping bag are futile. His route is blocked by a vertical ledge.
Under normal conditions, I could have negotiated it effortlessly. But like this, it was impossible. When daylight did arrive, it was overwhelming. It was such a relief. And the darkness can bring all this paranoia, and for daylight I realised I could do something.
In the early hours of a cold mid-January morning, the chances of anyone being in this inhospitable wilderness are remote. Ken only has himself to rely on, but the enormity of the task ahead preys on his mind, and he can't help hoping for rescue.
I kind of had it in my mind. Maybe emergency services would be called out. I imagined a helicopter or a couple of mountain rescue guys just walking through the forest blowing a whistle. I imagined all these little scenarios, but the more I thought about them, I just dismissed them. I was pinning so much hopes on so many slight what-ifs.
After a brutal crawl along the valley floor, Ken finally reaches the river.
The banks were higher than the water level, so it was kind of hard for me to reach down and get access to the water. So I had the idea of tying the ends of my shoelaces around the neck of a bottle. The relief on my mouth was blissful. It was like petrol going into a car. I just felt my body reviving, being full of energy again. Transylvania is full of bears and wolves, and as the day was drawing to a close, I began to panic. I was so out in the open, still far away from the trees. I was scared, and I'd try and crawl as fast as I possibly could.
He makes it to cover, but the scent of his blood-soaked body and his weakened state makes him easy prey.
I was really hungry, cold, dehydrated. I think it affected me. I wasn't sure if I was hallucinating or hearing things. I really believed I was hearing packs of wolves surrounding me. I was convinced I could see eyes just looking at me. I'd just sit there panting, like breathing heavily, really scared, just waiting for them to attack me. I just thought this is going to be horrible. Just being eaten's horrible, but to be eaten alive is just something else. I woke up the next morning and I just thought, oh, you're not dying. You're still here. And it's like my body wanted to stay alive. I'd come to a standstill the night before and heavy snowfall had landed on me and totally cocooned my body, and I think it must have kept me alive and kept me warm. And I decided to start crawling again.
His shattered hip means every move is pure torture. Only his incredible fitness and superhuman reserves of willpower drive him on. In spite of the pain, he's confident the worst is over.
It'd be stupid to even conceive of it getting more difficult. I've just got to get to the track. It's not going to be far away. One big final effort today, and you know, I'll be safe. Throughout this ordeal, it was just such a vital mission not to get my jacket wet. And again, I knew if that got wet, I was dead.
His jacket and thermal top must come off. If they get soaked, he'll freeze on the other side. But by taking them off, he's increasing the risk of hypothermia, which could kill him.
I was left with no other choice. It was a matter of being patient and being careful, and I just had to get across.
With his severe injuries, Ken takes tiny hops on his good leg, letting the current carry his broken limb. One false move, and he could quickly freeze to death.
All of a sudden, I became aware of my boot becoming loose, and before I could react, my boot come off my foot.
His boot is swept away by the river, and the foot on his good leg is now exposed. He makes it to the bank, but with a 3-mile crawl through the snow ahead, frostbite is guaranteed.
And my first thought was, I'm going to lose my foot. I'm going to get frostbite. I just thought, oh God, what am I going to do now? And eventually I turned a corner and I saw a light spill through the trees. And it brought a smile to my face. I just thought, I've done it, and just realised what an honest, faithful servant your body is. And I just felt really proud of myself then. I knew I'd got a strong heart and character, and I could get through things. Fought for my life, and there was no sadness or bitterness towards the mountain or anything that happened. I'd made it back, and it was just so comforting to be with someone and realise that it all come to an end. I was safe.
Pioneering surgery repaired his hip and leg, but Ken lost 4 toes to frostbite. 2.5 years after the accident, he was finally able to walk again.
So few people get the opportunity to learn about themselves so intimately, and I feel privileged to have had to face such struggles to get where I am now, and I'd say that's a good thing.
Ken is now fighting fit and is hoping to one day compete in the challenging Tour de France. David Whittlesey is about to head off on an epic journey down the Colorado River.
As early as I can remember, I was off in a little boat rowing around on water. I've discovered that I really, really enjoyed that kind of activity and the beauty and the solitude of the great outdoors.
Well, it looks like I'm going to be the only one on the river. We might as well pull up over there and start unloading.
David has been on a waiting list for a permit for 2 years. But when another raft trip is suddenly cancelled, it opens up the window he's been waiting so long for.
I was living a life of a bachelor and had no particular personal ties that would inhibit me from doing a trip like this.
But while David craves the solitude, the permit has also come in winter, a time when few others dare to take on the river. And this will be his first ever solo journey. David's journey down the Colorado River takes him through the remotest part of the canyon, hundreds of miles from civilization. The journey of nearly 300 miles goes without a hitch, and he soon forgets his earlier apprehension.
And then all of a sudden, your velocity increases dramatically. The sense of acceleration can be disorienting in and of itself. Lava Falls has an actual waterfall, a 14-foot drop. I was terrified. It is readily avoidable if you know what you're doing and pick the right course.
But David is now completely out of control.
I can remember very vividly my boat turning vertical and nosing straight down the falls. I was slammed forward into my ice chest. The boat, for reasons which I still cannot figure out today, bounced back upwards, even though my boat by then was entirely filled with water. It was upright and I was still in it and we were still floating. My first recollection that I was in any danger was when I found myself floating directly into these rocks. They're sharp pointed and they look like teeth in a dog's mouth. And I was sideways to the current at the time. I knew that was something I really did not want to allow to happen. I did take a powerful stroke with my upstream oar and attempt to pivot the boat around the rocks. I can't believe this is actually happening. I first thought that my boat will be fine and then it'll pivot itself around and float off of this thing.
But the current has pinned the raft tightly against the rock.
And before I know it, the boat shot up in the air. I was just totally stunned. How can the river be that powerful to shoot this 2,000-pound raft up in the air? I remember, looking down at the water and going, uh-oh, we're in big trouble now. I came up underneath the boat. My head was out of water and I was breathing.
The water is barely 40 degrees, and David knows he must get out fast or he'll freeze to death.
I was concerned that I would become entangled in the raft. I'm wet and I'm cold and I'm with an upside down raft. I remember standing up on this upside-down raft with one oar, trying to navigate downriver to get to this sandy alcove, sort of like a Venetian gondolier with his one oar navigating the canals.
But the river is so powerful, it's impossible to steer.
I tend to turn more than the raft when I try and turn the oar.
Swept past the safety of the alcove, he's now hurtling towards the next set of rapids, with no way of navigating his way through it.
There's literally nothing to hang on to. There are no handholds, no toe holds, nothing.
Desperately fighting for breath in the icy river, David's got to hold on to his raft or risk drowning.
And I managed to grab the lifeline around the boat.
But the powerful current drags him and the raft into huge underwater rocks.
It floated up onto the rocks and dragged me over the rocks with the boat.
David David is faced with a desperate decision. If he keeps hold of his boat, he'll be smashed into the rocks. If he lets go, he'll lose everything.
My thinking was, if I don't get out of this river, it's going to kill you. So there I am, standing up on this outcropping, watching my boat float away and calling after it, hoping it would come back to me like I was calling after a dog.
Come on!
I was frightened. I kept hoping that by some bizarre circumstance it would eddy out someplace where I would be able to get to it. And once it disappeared from view, I just go, you know, good God, what am I into now? I realized I was in a pretty serious predicament. There's not even a spot to sit comfortably, much less do anything else. I started, you know, seriously considering what my options were. You know, do you want to try and hike out of the canyon? Just what are your options?
Trapped at the bottom of steep cliffs, David can see no option but to try to scale the sheer rock wall to safety. It's painfully slow progress. After an hour, he's still only 30 feet above the river.
I'm traversing these rock faces using my toes on little cracks in the rock and using as much caution as I possibly could conceive of due to the fact that I was alone and, you know, any falls would be catastrophic.
But the higher he climbs, the more unstable the rock face becomes.
This dislodged rock decided to roll down onto my foot. It resulted in breaking a couple of toes as this rock landed on my foot. There wasn't anything I could do about it at the time.
Climbing upwards is agony, but the cliff face is too steep to descend. So he has no option but to keep going.
I grab onto a rock. I'm using it as a handhold to work my way around sort of an outcropping, and the rock comes off in my hand. And then I sort of teetered there for a few seconds, minutes, hours, days, lifetimes, who knows. I lost my balance and fell over completely backwards, sliding head first on my back across this rock face, thinking, you're dead, this is it. My life jacket caught on something. It flipped me completely over in a backward somersault. I hit my chin on something hard enough to break 4 teeth, knocked myself entirely unconscious. I found myself in the Colorado River coming up out of the water, spitting teeth out of my mouth. I could see another sandy spot further downstream from me. I'd say a half a mile down from where I was. I knew that just getting myself into this alcove that I could see was going to be a challenge. And I'm probably a good 30 feet above the river, and lo and behold, right in front of my face is a can of beer.
The beer can is the first sign of life he's seen in over 20 days. But he quickly realizes it must have been washed up in floods years earlier.
This beer has been there long enough that the label is just about entirely faded off of it.
Having lost all of his supplies, David knows it could provide a valuable source of energy. David slowly picks his way across the rocks, and 2 hours later, finally reaches the small isolated cove.
By the time I had actually gotten down to the sandy alcove, I'd pretty much dried out and warmed up just from exertion.
Only now does David realize the enormity of his situation. His quest for solitude brought him to the heart of the Grand Canyon. But it's now left him utterly alone, in winter, when he's unlikely to see anyone for months. Surrounded by mountains at the edge of the river, he's completely stranded. He's lost everything. He has no food, shelter, or warm clothing. And David knows he now faces a freezing night ahead.
I was getting down into the 40s at night. I was aware that the most immediate threat to my health and sanity was going to be hypothermia.
With no way to call for help, and all his tools and equipment lost, David knows he must rely on himself and his ingenuity if he's to stay alive. Without food, David's body has no calories to burn to generate warmth, putting him at even greater risk of hypothermia. He needs to keep moving, but fatigue finally overwhelms him.
I woke up and was startled that I had fallen asleep and was concerned and frightened by that. Well, geez, if I let my guard down, I'm not going to make it.
As he faces his third night out in the canyon, the desire to sleep is overwhelming.
It's only me and the moon and the rock formation and the river, and you may be able to see it again tomorrow, and you may not. I really was feeling, really dejected and wondering why I ended up in this situation to begin with.
David is clinging to the hope that by now his friend will have raised the alarm, and tomorrow rescue will arrive. After 4 days fighting to stay alive, it seems a search party has finally come looking for him.
I jumped up and down and waved my arms.
Help! Hey!
You're looking at this plane, and you can clearly see it.
Hey!
I'm wearing a bright red life vest.
Here!
It's just inconceivable that they can't see you.
Hey! Here!
But as the plane banks away, David realizes he's invisible from the air.
Hey! Come back! Come back!
His only hope of rescue
Come back!
has gone. David's ingenuity and determination have helped him survive for 6 days, injured and alone in the Grand Canyon. He expected to be rescued days ago. But now the hostile winter conditions have taken a terrible toll on his body, and he's beginning to lose his mind.
I had all kinds of wild fantasies occurring, you know. The world had been devastated by nuclear explosions, and I was probably the only human left on the planet. Particular incidents or scenes out of my past history would come to the surface of my consciousness.
Hey!
I remember pretty vividly thinking about and remembering events that I had shared with various different friends and so forth, and thinking about them and being sad that, you know, I might not see them again.
Now too weak to gather wood or maintain his fire, David's core body temperature is dropping rapidly. He's losing his battle with hypothermia.
My first inkling that something was happening was the noise of the helicopter. Fairly rapidly increased in volume and noise. When the helicopter came around the corner, I was stood up and I was waving my arms and jumping up and down and crying and laughing. And I mean, there was a great sense of relief. And you know, I've never experienced so many emotions all at one time as I did right then. I was laughing because I was so happy to have survived the whole ordeal, and I was crying because I was so grateful for having survived the whole ordeal. It really was an upwelling of emotions that was totally beyond my normal range of experience.
Having discovered David's capsized raft 20 miles downstream, the park authorities had launched a search and rescue mission.
They were amazed to find me still alive. They told me that they were sure they were looking for a body. The pilot had a sandwich that his wife had made for him. It was probably one of the best sandwiches I've ever had in my life.
"7 days after his accident, David was finally airlifted to safety. He went on to make a full recovery and is still passionate about rafting.
I never did believe it was my time to die. I do believe that you can enhance your chances of surviving by believing that you are going to survive. My life has changed significantly because of this incident. In some deep spiritual sense, that I have a more positive outlook, and I also think I have a better grasp on what it means to be alive.